Hey guys, welcome to La Bella Vita. I am your host and founder of Bullies Keep Out, Dana Dracavello, and today we are here with Jarod Thompson, actor and Bullies Keep Out advocate. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, of course, everybody knows we're going to have, we're going to talk about bullying and hate in different forms and whatnot of bullying and hate, as there's so many, and it's quite the epidemic these days. And we'll jump into some other topics too. I want to start off with getting your take on bullying and what's your motivation to fight for the cause, and have you ever experienced it yourself?
Yeah, I actually I was bullied a lot starting in middle school. Kind of a little bit of my backstory. I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and I was adopted when I was 6 months old by some very I like to jokingly say some very 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 country white folk, and I was homeschooled when I was little until I was in seventh grade, and I really never had the chance to like learn about my culture or anything like that, or be familiarized with anything to do with Asian culture at all. And when I got to public school in seventh grade, um, the slurs and that kind of stuff started flying pretty quickly, and I just wasn't that familiar with it. And I'll be honest, I don't think at the time I realized I was getting bullied, but it started sinking in a little bit later, especially in high school, when it became a combination of that plus a lot of bullying over weight and that kind of stuff. So it's something that definitely kind of hits close to home for me, and I'm very familiar with. I I want to, unfortunately, I also can say that I've been on the other end of the spectrum too, because in return to that, I've been the guy on the other end who's responded by saying some things I know I shouldn't have said, when I was younger, because, it just as a defense mechanism to my own, bullying. So, I've seen both sides of it, and it's something I'm pretty passionate about now, especially when I look at the culture around us and I see how prevalent it is and how many kids today have to deal with stuff that, to me, I think, um, compared to what what I went through was cake compared to probably what they went through, and it's just gotten worse and worse with the evolution of social media and the internet and that kind of stuff. Since that wasn't around, when I was in high school, if it was, it probably would have ended very badly. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. It seems like, I've asked people that before, and they're like, I don't know if it was more hidden or if what was going on, but they said, bullying always existed, but I still feel that it's so much more dangerous these days, and now, and the way people are, how far it's gotten and evolved, and with social media and even offline, and the suicide rate has also gone up, and that's a topic that's very important that I don't think we discuss enough.
right,
The third leading cause of death from 15 to 24-year-olds, which is very young, is suicide, and that's so disheartening to hear. That
absolutely,
that's why lives, are being lost, and because of bullying and cyberbullying and LGBT youth. I recently just found out about a young 16-year-old Italian boy. It was brought to my attention, and it's I think it's controversial, and it's such a sensitive topic and to talk about, but I think people need to talk about it, and that's really a lot of what it's about is compassion and empathy and talking, and that's why they have the hotlines and stuff, because it's really just sometimes just about talking to someone and and be a listening ear. I mean, what's your
right.
take on that? I mean, do you feel like, what do you feel maybe is not being done enough, or
It's like you said, it's something that's kind of a taboo topic, I think, to an extent, and that's sad because it almost makes me wonder, why haven't we learned from, like, you think about the AIDS epidemic in the late '80s, you know, um, it took forever, and look what happened, so many people lost their lives, and what people don't like to talk about is it didn't just affect, the homosexual community. It affected everybody, and so from an awareness standpoint, that's something that's kind of sad to me. Is that something that um, is kind of in the same boat as far as what we should be talking about, and maybe it's a sensitive subject, but we should have learned by now that the sensitive subjects have to be addressed quickly and swiftly. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse. until someone finally does something about it, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, it's sad.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you're hearing almost on a daily basis, and I've had people that I talk to all the time because we do mentoring at Bullies Keep Out, and I've had people talk about hurting themselves, cutting themselves, having those thoughts, and you know, it's a lot of people say, well, psychiatrists and therapy and counselors, and sometimes it's just about an ear, and just like I said, that's why the hotlines exist. I mean, to my knowledge, they're not psychiatrists at the hotlines. So, I
Right.
mean, they are trained, and it's just about really, like I said, listening to someone and giving them an ear and talking them down. And if you need to, I mean, I've been in a situation where I've had to actually call the police, for someone, because you really can't take a chance and you can't take it lightly. And I think sometimes people don't realize, um,
Right.
and they're like, oh, they're just talking, they're just upset, it'll go away. And what if it doesn't? And then we don't do anything, or we don't act, or we're not talking about it, or we're not taking it seriously. And I think they're just like, there's such fear, and that people just don't really know what to
Oh,
do when they're
yeah.
put in those situations.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I think, one thing that is starting to become kind of the norm too in our culture is the fact that we're starting to see a lot more young people uh, almost reach out, but and they're starting to ask for help. But the problem is when they ask for help, because of the way our society has evolved, the way the social media has come into play. I think a lot of times most people almost want to turn it into a joke, and they want to kind of bypass it, and it, it puts young people in a very bad position because if they don't feel like they can be taken seriously, in the tragic moments in their lives, then it's going to end up in tragedy. So,
yeah, it's true, and that's what I think social media is good for, is to be having these discussions. Excuse me. Social media is, it's a beautiful thing, and it does have its negative aspects as well. Like I said, with the cyberbullying and whatnot, and to use it for hate and to post things and tweet and whatever a person may do. But it's also used for a lot of social good, and it can be used as a foundation and a talking
right,
point. And people are sometimes afraid to do it face to face. They don't maybe want to look somebody in the face. They just need to talk to
right,
someone, just like when you do it on the phone. And that's why I get a lot of people DMing me,
yeah,
and they want really to just talk. And even if it's for an hour or 5 minutes, I give them my ear, and obviously if I see that it's at a different level, you take different precautions. But, I really think that if you start off the foundation with talking, and when they reach out and we take it seriously and we speak up about it more and do more intervention and prevention, that I think that it'll be a stepping stone to lessening it, the rate.
definitely,
It's just, when you hear that it's the third leading cause of death in such young individuals, and you hear why people are taking their lives, and you feel it can be prevented, it's really heartbreaking. And then for the families and friends of those people too. And sometimes, unfortunately, sadly, it's because of the family or friends that didn't accept them because they were gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, or they were put out into the street, or in those ages where you're creating your thick skin, and it's hard
right,
to come out and to really you know trust in people that they're not going to make a joke out of it and they're going to accept you. And then when they don't, it's almost like a kick in the gut. So you know I think that we
I
really
mean,
need to do more.
right. I. It's funny because the more kids I see now, reaching out across the internet, and I see them, talking out, whether it be on, social media or one thing I've kind of come across a lot is the kids that are really starting to speak out, like on YouTube and things like Periscope, and that's very interesting to me. And what I hope is that these kids are the ones that are going to um, as much as they're willing to reach out, are also going to be willing to actually speak up when somebody, reaches out to them. That's the thing, is because a lot of times I've noticed there's a tendency in these kids to really want to seek help, but then at the same time, when help kind of comes out, it almost is the fear of, I don't think a good word for it, maybe exposure,
Mm-hmm.
Being kind of exposed and kind of out in the open, kind of being brought to light. And it's kind of funny because it's already out there in a sense, but then when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of it, are they willing to take the help? And um, I think a lot of times, especially within like the LGBT community, that's a huge thing, because you see these kids that say, "Oh, I want to talk to my parents. I want to talk to my parents. How do I do that?" And then somebody reaches out to them, and it's almost like they want to act like it never, they never said a thing to begin with,
Right.
And I understand, but I think that's also a reflection on how tragic things kind of are, as far as what our standard has been, as far as who's going to get rejected and who's going to be treated badly, just for being who they are,
Right.
and that's sad. So,
Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying. Almost like confrontation. When
right,
the confrontation comes to them, it kind of almost scares them into like, oh my gosh, somebody's responding. What do I do now? Or did I really, do you regret doing it? You see a lot of the videos with the index cards, which we all know with the Amanda Todd, and actually a recent PSA by, Michael Raymond James that he did. He used it.
yeah,
Excuse me. It was a very powerful PSA, and that was kind of like, I believe, where a lot of some of the motivation came from it. And you see that I've seen some of the periscopes too, where they're not really showing their faces, but they're just talking. They just want to talk. And I've also seen a lot of people say a lot of really mean things and negative things. And I really don't understand that perspective. I really don't get, because like if you're joining in to listen to someone, why do you want to be hateful? Why do you want to say mean things? If you see someone that's teetering on that edge, and then you got people thinking that they're doing it for attention. There's just a very fine line when they're trying to come out, I think, with live recordings or YouTube videos. Like you were saying, it's like, you know, the balance maybe is uneven, and on, really getting the help that you really want and needing the support that you need, or just really you wanted to do that one time thing and that's really all you needed to do and it's out of your system. How do you
right,
you know how do you determine who really
is in need.
needs,
Yeah,
and it's like you just kind of almost really say, okay, well, let's help everybody, because obviously they all need something, and it's true, they all need
right,
something, but you have to try to figure out what it is that they need, especially if they're not willing to, if it's too much trying to pull it out of them and you can't get them to talk. I've gotten a lot of them to
right.
come and talk, and do interviews and share their stories on the website, and even some of them video interviews and speak up, and it's great because I think the more people see them doing that, the more they're going to want to do it themselves, and it might even make it easier for them to speak to their parents.
Right.
I believe it's also partly the parents that are responsible too, because like, you have to make it easy for your kids to come to you.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I think um, I found him in an interesting situation in the fact that I, especially not so much just from the acting standpoint in general, but from me working in theater, um, the LGBT community is a lot more prevalent, and it's kind of funny because being a straight male, I'm actually almost a minority,
Right.
as far as being a male in theater,
Mhm.
and it's kind of funny because um, one of the conversations I had with one of my friends recently was talking to him about the fact that I think I get more flack from my parents doing musical theater than he did coming out to his parents after they knew he did musical theater.
Right.
And but I think it's it's about kids nowadays. It's almost the same thing with politics. The way I look at it is, as youth, a lot of parents like to indoctrinate their children, and when they do, they don't like to think about how that may come back to affect them later, whether it be indoctrination through religion, politics, whatever that might be. The scary thing is to think, in 10 years, what if my 8-year-old wants to come to me with something a lot more serious? What if they want to talk to me about suicide? What if they want to tell me, that they're gay? Are they going to be able to do that, or are they going to be so afraid because I've already drilled all this stuff into their head and said, hey, you need to believe what I believe, that that's the fear, And that's something that, I genuinely believe that there's a lot of parents that do it with the best intention. I don't believe that they do it because they think that they're trying to treat their child wrong or they're abusing their child. But at the same time, it's a pretty easy thing to bypass, to not give them the opportunity, to not give them, a chance to have their own voice, be who they are.
Yeah, that's true, and no, I understand, your standpoint on that and your perspective, and it's true in a lot of ways, but I also think even in the schools and even as kids growing up, that this should be like, in today's society, this should be something that we're talking about regularly, not just prevention programs on bullying, but talking about suicide with it, even though it's a touchy subject, talking about, being LGBT, part of the LGBT community, maybe educating, even having a seminar for parents to teach them, maybe sometimes some of them are not sure how to talk to their kids, or they don't know how to approach it. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you necessarily know how to approach those subjects. So maybe there needs to be things like that in schools and programs and assemblies and seminars, and parents get involved, and also as parents, let's sit down and talk to our kids about all these things, and then when that time comes, you're almost prepared for it. It's just, it's too much of a epidemic in today's society to not be sitting down and communicating. But we have so much technology. It's like the parent is probably texting the child in their bedroom, "Time for dinner," and back when I was younger, it was like screaming across the house. We weren't texting each other or, messing each other on the computer from different rooms. It was like, okay, it's time for dinner, using our voices and calling each other on the phone. And now technology, I was just discussing that with somebody else recently in an interview, that technology for the young population is a little bit extreme. Even though it can be a positive thing, it's a little bit extreme in the sense that we're forgetting how to communicate with each other. And I even think with parents and adults, that's why sometimes, too, they're not sure how to approach it, because they're even enthralled in the technology and texting and almost not picking up the phone and sitting face-to-face with their kids and, doing homework, having discussions. Let's have a serious discussion, or let's just put it to the side because you don't have any problems right now. But I think that even when we don't have problems, we need to be prepared for if the problem comes up. So if we talk to our kids about this stuff before the problems happen, they're educated on it and know what to do when it happens. But I think there's this notion that, well, until it happens, we don't really need to worry about it.
I agree. I think that is a serious problem. I think that, but like I said, especially growing up in Florida, it's not really fair to call Florida the South, because I think Florida in itself is not, what most people consider the South. It's a little bit more progressive.
I'm from New York, but I lived there for a little while. It's definitely not the South.
Yeah, exactly. So you understand what I'm saying when I say that, like, growing up in Florida, it's a bit more progressive, but at the same time, compared to living in New York, it still is different because there is more of that. Once again, I don't want to be mean to people, but I think the best word is for almost fear mongering, and the idea that the unknown is better left alone than addressed, compared to families in, say, like New York or Chicago, I think that's because for some, it's not that the issues are less prevalent there, because it's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got, people, you look across the landscape of it, and people just in the South tend to just rather leave things alone.
Yeah.
No,
I completely understand what you're saying. It's a lot more diverse in areas like New York, LA, California, Chicago, some of the places you mentioned, Chicago. It's true. It very much is. Florida is, like I said, I've lived there for many years. It's a lot more laid back, and every state is different. Like you said, it's true. It's not really. It's actually, you know, it's a fact. I mean, every state is, some states are smaller than others. They're very close knit. They're they don't. They're everybody knows your business and everybody wants to talk. So everybody's laid back and they don't address anything until it needs to be addressed.
Exactly.
It's just the way
Exactly.
it is. Every place is different. Even though the issues are all the same across the board, every place is different, in different areas of the world and in different countries. So
Definitely.
you actually made a valid point there.
Yeah, I mean, it that plays into that, and I know that because of my own parents. I grew up in I mean, for a very straightforward answer, I grew up in a very close knit, conservative Christian household, and my dad is, and I love my dad more than anything in the world. But my dad and me share very different views now. My dad is, very staunch right wing, and I don't have a problem with that. As long as he's willing to hear me out when I have something to say too. That's what I tell him, and that's my thing is I hate to see so many people not they put their beliefs before their humanity,
Yeah.
and that scares me, especially with the I mean the Kim Davises of the world. That terrifies me, because the question then becomes, where do we draw the line? Where does it become more about just treating somebody the even well, to use her own beliefs on it, to treat somebody how they want to be treated. I mean, how do you not do that? Why? How can you put somebody else's feelings and emotions behind just something that you want to tout for yourself?
Right.
That's kind
Right.
of scary.
It is, and we could all have values, morals, and beliefs, and everybody has a right to their opinion. But like you said, doesn't mean you have to hate. It doesn't mean you don't have to listen. It doesn't mean you have to, be, bullying or, you know, like it's when people use their religion as an excuse for, the LGBT community, and it's like, okay, but you have your certain beliefs, and that's fine. But where do we
Right.
lose our humanity and our compassion and the kindness and the love that we're supposed to have? Because you're born with that. Hatred is a learned behavior, and so
Right.
is bullying, and it's something that you learn from people. It's not something that you're born with. So yeah, your humanity should not be, that should always come before anything first when it involves other people and ourselves, because we have to be kind to ourselves too. It starts
No,
with
absolutely.
ourselves and it goes out into the, so
Yeah.
it's very, very true that it's a good point to make. It's not so much about people having bad beliefs. It's about, how you react to it.
Right.
That's what I think
Right.
the issue is.
Definitely.
So, one final note, what is some inspiring words or something you would say to those out there who are struggling, whether it's bullying, cyberbullying, people in the LGBT community, someone struggling with, negative thoughts, suicidal thoughts? What is something you would say to them, or give a piece of advice?
I, I mean, honestly, I would just say that there is always hope, and that hope doesn't necessarily have to be in the form that people might want to believe it's in. And to say just don't let yourself garner your self worth through relationships or through your job, but really learn just to value yourself for being yourself, because that's what makes you unique. That's what makes you an individual, and that is what life is about: is being individual. That's what we get the most out of life from, is what makes us different. And I would definitely say too that there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in seeking out somebody to talk to, um, because you never know what the person that's sitting across from you is going to deal with. And even here sitting right now, I'm back in my hometown for a few days, and I'm sitting in a coffee shop, or my favorite coffee shop, and a lot of times I look around and I just ask myself, is the person who's sitting across from me, are they dealing with the same things I am, and they probably are. So you're not alone, and your situation isn't unique to you. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because people have been there and people have overcome it. Just don't give up hope.
That's a great message. I love it. Thank you so much again for, I know you have some time off and you want to enjoy that, so I really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here with us today in chat. Look forward to your PSA and working with you more. And again, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I'm glad that you're part of BKO, and it's great to have you on board.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to just really offer as much as I can in terms of exactly what I was just saying. I would encourage people. I've told people before, don't be afraid to reach out to me on Twitter. Don't be afraid to reach out to me on social media. I really am an open book, and obviously I try to answer as quickly and as often as I can. Sometimes it's not 100% feasible for me to answer right away, so I don't want that to be unrealistic. But at the same time, for those people who are dealing with that, if you want to talk to somebody, there's somebody sitting right here, and I'm 100% willing all the time.
Yeah, that's great. And we love to have, people that are willing to do that, and we do. And that's what I love about BKO, that it's very personal, and it's almost like, very family-oriented, the way, we handle things and the way we approach things. So it's great to know that people know that they can come to not only us, but, our advocates and talk, because, especially when you look at your therapist, you do want to talk to them, and sometimes it makes them feel better. So it's good to know that, they're offering to be there. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this chat with Jarod, and there will be more to come from him and from Bullies Keep Out. And remember to be kind and love big.